Chula Vista Public Library, Digital Resources. Today we're going to talk about Tutor.com. Hi, I'm Randall Fye, Library Associate. One of the questions we get asked here a lot at the library is, does the library have any resources that can help me get a job? So my goal here is to convince you on why you should watch this video. Because this video's goal is to convince you in 5 minutes to watch these 3 webinars. Each of these webinars are 1 hour in length, and it helps us to get a job. So I will give you my top 5 picks from each of these webinars, and hopefully those 5 picks from each one will convince you to go to youtube.com and watch the webinars in its length. Today we're going to talk about Tutor.com and the webinar that it gives us. 3 in particular: cover letters and resumes, applying online and interviews, and job search and Q&A sessions. And in these 3 webinars, I'm going to talk about my top 5 picks. But before we get started, let me talk about some of the digital resources we have here, like Tutor.com. If you go to our webpage, click on any of these 2 links, it'll take you to where you enter your 14-digit library card number, and you're at our splash page for Tutor.com. The second item is, if you do have internet or YouTube app, you can go straight to our Chula Vista Public Library channel, click our videos, and start watching some of the items that we talked about here today. In our first webinar, we're going to talk about cover letters and resumes, and I'm going to give you my top 5 picks in the 1 hour segment. How do you get to these webinars? Go to Tutor.com, either through the internet or on the YouTube app, click on videos, and just select and scroll through the ones until you see this one, which is Understanding Cover Letters and Resumes. Rachel Ekman does an excellent job at explaining through these 3 webinars all the things that you need to do. Now, I can't explain all of them, but I can give you my top 5 to hopefully entice you to click on some. Let's start with number 1, and it's titled Understanding Cover Letters and Resumes. This one is for 1 hour, but I'm going to talk about my top 5 picks, starting with number 1. What is ATS? ATS is an applicant tracking system, and Rachel Ekman goes in great detail in describing it for you. Number 2 on my list is resume writing. Now, who doesn't need help in resume writing? I do, and she talks about these 12 topics. Third on my list is selecting the relevant skills. She gives a great example of how we should talk about skills that pertain to our resume. Coming in at number 4 are power verbs. She gives us a comparison on using these instead of these. And last on our list is the military crossover resumes. Now, sometimes it's good to list everything that you do in the military, but sometimes it's not relevant. So this is our webinar number 2, titled Applying Online and Doing Interviews, and these are my top 5 picks. Before we get started, Tutor.com is accessible through the YouTube app or the internet. Just click on the videos, scroll down until you see this title, and once you see that, it's going to change once you start the video, which will change into this one, which is titled How to Land an Interview. So let's get started. My number 1 is finding out as much as you can about the company that you're going to be applying for. Very important. At number 2 is our application strategy. Submitting too many applications can sometimes be too much work for us. Everything in moderation. At number 3, we should keep track of all the applications that we submit. It can be pretty embarrassing to submit an application twice to the same job. We should also talk about interviews online. I don't know about you, but the first 2 bullets, never use a mobile device if you can avoid it, and never do an interview in your car, sounds pretty important. And at number 5, it's all about practice, practice, practice. Sit down, ask these questions, and answer them over and over again. Our last webinar has to do with job search and Q&A session at the very end. And these are my top 5. And once again, before we get started, Tutor.com is available either via web or via YouTube app. Just go there, click on the videos, and scroll down until you see this job search and Q&A session, which is at the very tail end. My first pick goes to the host and presenter, Rachel Ekman. She does an excellent job through these 3 webinars. Kudos to her. Second, she describes LinkedIn application, and she tells us to always to turn on the job seeking preference app. Also about LinkedIn, she reminds us in my number 3 to always update everything. Make sure that it doesn't have old information, because sometimes they might try to contact you and the email is not correct. At number 4, she reminds us also through LinkedIn to add skills, licenses, certificates, and accomplishments. And last on my list is the latter part of this webinar where she asks us what are the questions you have and answer them. That's it. I hope you enjoyed the job help. Thank you for watching.